Well, good morning, Julie. This is Ed Reether in Boston, Massachusetts. Talking to Julie Anderson in Australia. How are you?
Hello. Hello. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Hey, so I wanted to ask you a question. I'm going to jump into something, and I feel it's okay. We don't have to do a big introduction because a lot of people already know what we've been involved with for many years. But there is a certain issue that is very prominent in the hearts and the minds of many people that I speak with, um, who are either in the organization of Aridam or not in the organization of Aridam, but feel, have, or sense a deep and devotional relationship to Harida Samraj. Love it. And I get a sense that the difficulties that people have with one another presently isn't too far off from these kinds of interpolitics that were going on within the lifetime of Arida and the community or the inner circle of devotees who were serving beloved. I mean, if you took the context and the issues out, the substance or the architecture of the politics seems to me to be very similar, whether it was in his theatrical setting or now outside his lifetime setting. So does that make any sense to you, that the seemingly discordant or fractional aspects of the gathering or the community? And I don't mean to just put a broad stroke over this, because there was a lot of intimacy and closeness that people shared as they served beloved. But it seemed to have a strong political strain, political context to the interaction that people had. And so some of the dishonesty or the duplicity or the political infighting and the ins and the outs were seemingly, although I wasn't in the circles, having enough exposure to people who were in the circles, not just you, but other people. It seemed that that was just the soup of the day, so to speak.
Yes, it's always been that way.
And so what I'm going to speak to is the frustration, which generates, but also the devotion and everything like that. But it seems like the frustration was somehow wasn't so divisive then. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Well, it definitely was. And that is what Adida indicated up until the day of his Mahasamadhi.
Right.
So I would say that given the life of the direct relationship to him in any form that it manifests, whether you're physically on his body or not, or even across the globe, and I'm speaking personally, and also addressing what you indicated relative to the understanding that there are many, 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 many people who have lived that kind of direct intimacy with him, whether it be physically on his body or not, but they were directly in relationship to him as their heart master, and took this seriously in relationship to him. And all the while that was happening, while that heart response was there, we were in his sphere, whether physically present on his body or not, always in his satsang, always in his sphere of blessing and transmission. And even though that was the case, and even though he indicated that sighting and that recognition, this darshan, this satsang, is sufficient in and of itself. All he has to, what he consistently, synchronously had to address is the ego act.
Right.
That literally shuts this down, literally shuts the relationship down in terms of his actual, our irresponsibility in relationship to making right use of Adida as a Siddha Guru, a transmission master, or what we did was dramatize egoity and misinterpretations and superimposing points of view. And this is what he indicated, created the entire theater and play around him.
Right.
A classic insider. a classic insider's dramatization of proximity, getting off on and taking advantage of and misusing the one who seems to be the focal point of attention. And getting off on the experiences and the status, the visibility, the perks. Well,
I was reminded
a lot of misuse in that regard. And this is what ended up undermining the ability for the most perfect practice, the gift that is given from the beginning. And if this isn't obvious to anybody that this gift of recognition is realization in any and every moment of true radical devotion, in which the root of egoity, the root act, is understood. And then it's constant adaptation, developmental adaptation, so that the psychophysical mechanism can assume responsibility for that gift. That's the summary of the entire process, and it is actually wordless. Everything surrounding it that is he gave as gifts are to serve that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, in the teaching, he's always bringing so there's a big difference between just reading the teaching and then going through the real life circumstances that you're referring to. But in the teaching, he always makes this simple thing, is that you're only making a presumption. And that could be interpreted as you're just making some kind of a mental, perceptual, cognitive dissonance. And if you just cleared up your perception, you'd clear up the whole mess. But it's quite more depthful than that. But he does say it's always in that perception or assumption or presuming. You're always presuming the sense of separation. And that's the fundamental error, at least he's in the sense of the mind.
Yes.
Working with the mind.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And this radical understanding that you're speaking of here is what synchronously occurs with the recognition of the divine self position, or reality or truth itself. That he always said was not confined to his body, not within his body as a separate other, constantly undermining any forms of the ways that we would focus our energy and attention in him as a separate other and superimpose all of the human needs, life desires, resolutions, solutions, salvation, God ideas, all of what the great tradition of humanity has attempted, how it has attempted to resolve its search for what the heck is going on here? Who am I? What am I doing here? What's the purpose of this embodiment? He was constantly, his entire passion was this, in direct relationship with anyone who was serious about that realization. And his indication was that there was enough of a response to him to serve his demonstration, which was why he was here, was to demonstrate the 7th stage way and process, which he said he fulfilled personally. And we participated in it. Like, yeah, there's a lot of shit going on. a lot of seemingly discord and all of that, but this is why I can't just look at what's occurring as mere ego politics, because I've also seen the recognition and responsive devotion in the hearts and the eyes and the bodies of thousands of people, and seen the signs in the world of the heart itself and of this yearning, unquestionably. So, but it's become clear that, as he indicated over and over again, and this sensitivity to what I saw was his frustration. And this may be completely taken wrong, but there's no other way that I can say this, but his frustration has become my frustration. My frustration is his frustration. There isn't really any distinction in that regard, because it's so abundantly clear to me what is truth and reality and the demonstration of that, and his instruction, and what is not. And I'm not excluding myself from that observation, that self-understanding, that self-observation, that radical understanding in the slightest. And neither did he, in terms of the different structural mechanisms and vehicles that he had to actually demonstrate the outshining, the utterly perfect transcendence of any form of being entangled with the patterns that the ego creates. You see, and at the time of his Mahasamadhi, he indicated, not enough. You are still superimposing all the patterns of egoity on me, and this way is not my creation. This is your creation. And there needs to be a huge turnabout relative to the manner in which you make use of all the gifts that I've been given. So here we are in a moment, in myself included, because in the gifts of hearing and seeing, and in this recognition, there isn't a separate self in truth. But that doesn't negate responsibility for being actually literally manifested as a psychophysical entity. And you can't assert that you are the witness as a form of dissociation from responsibility.
No, but you have the capability to work within that limitation, or that presumption, or that karmic energy.
Yeah, and when that does happen, the actual responsibility that must be taken is even clearer. Like actual, literal, creative, artful, not abstracted, not dissociated consideration has to take place with each individual relative to what that process is as it is inherently revealed, and make agreements in a context of recognition that actually serve the ego self-transcending yoga.
Well, this is the benefit of the community, because since this is always the reminder, you're always having to work within these kinds of limitations, and to be on your own is a little bit of a kind of a self-reflective mechanism, where if you're living with other people in the same kind of heart space mind understanding, then you have this to be reflected back to you. If you're living by yourself, you have nothing really in many ways to be reflected back to you. You're pretty much left to your own devices.
Precisely. And this is the part of the primary argument where there is nothing but unqualified relationship itself. The forms of relationship and relatedness that the ego dramatizes is actually dissociative and abstraction. It's an abstraction. It's not even being in direct feeling relationship to everyone and everything as it arises. So, for example, when I noted, going back to what Beloved said to me about this conundrum of feeling like it's all fucked up, it can't be fixed, and it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's our fault, placing the blame somewhere, trying to find the reason for it, it's utterly fruitless. I mean, there are real matters to be addressed in terms of right life and discipline and service and devotion. But when I left the island in physical proximity to him, and I would come up and notice all of these things as the mandala, participating in the sphere of his mandala, even all the way out into what seems to be the outer realm, which is a joke in and of itself, there is no outer and inner realm in the truth itself. There is only the one divine self condition, and it's literally not so that the inner and the outer temple is entirely a secondary structural mechanism that has nothing to do with the literal process of recognition and devotion. So when he would say, do not, this admonition, do not dissociate, you see, is not merely an instruction about you must always be physically in this place, like this, like saying you had to stay here in this room and this place in order for the process to occur. No, I mean, that's not even possible. I mean, for each individual and all of the conjunctions that are necessary for the actual ego self-transcending yoga to occur is as vast as there are individual beings and even of mind itself, because all of those constructs must be gone beyond, at root, gone beyond the ego act that creates all of this, not as the source of it. Ego isn't the source of it. The source condition is unqualified conscious light itself, the act that creates the manifestation that we see that is full of conflict is the ego creation. It's not divine Leela. The ego creation is not divine Leela. Divine Leela is the ever-living present condition in which recognition is the case, and therefore the right action is obvious, and that the whole bodily being is given over as a servant to that divine process. It's not about something that the separate self gets for itself as an experience. That's not recognition. So at the time of his Mahasamadhi, he indicated that there was insufficient recognition in the collective, and not only the collective in individuals who were presuming advancement. Why? Unhandled business at the foundation, the structural mechanisms. And it makes complete sense to me why those who are presently have been took control of his work at the time of his Mahasamadhi attempted to concretize those structures, to make it firmly established, so to speak, to protect it, to honor what he asked to be done. But it wasn't, because it was only principally one individual and the ones that she chose to do this with, it did not include the fullness of those that he empowered to participate in this process of the continuation of his work with the whole. It's only a very narrow kind of perspective of what one aspect. It's really more of a managerial aspect. It's a functional aspect. But there's so much more that is being dismissed in terms of how the actual process has to manifest and what kind of consideration must occur with each individual. And the more that devotees like myself are cut off from being able to participate in helping serve that process in direct relationship with his treasures, it's actually cutting off the means that he has established that are necessary for there to be enough individuals to help to form the construct, the actual context of wherein the real relationship can be lived. It's that simple. Yeah. It's literally that simple. So I'm just saying, okay, well, all right. I don't know, it doesn't interfere with the direct recognition response in relationship to him, but it sure as hell doesn't interfere with his work. And is there an actual distinction? No. So I'm not fulfilling my responsibility if I shut up about it.
Well, I think I think you've really hit the proverbial nail on the head, and he also gave a good summary here. And I'm looking at the time; it's been almost an hour. So I really do want to say that what you've just said in this last couple of minutes here to be a good summary to what is a large issue that's preventing, although, as you point out, that the form that people are creating is necessary and right in its own narrow sense, but it's limiting the vastness of who he is and the devotees that are in the larger world. I think you've hit it quite succinctly.
Beloved, It's the beloved obviousness of the all-inclusiveness.
Right.
Recognition of the beloved. As everyone and everything, non-differently.
So at that point, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to having another conversation with you soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.